Hello everyone, in this week's video I'm going to be giving tips on drawing hair. So let's get started. For me, hair is one of my favorite parts to draw when drawing characters. But I didn't always like drawing hair. I actually really disliked it when I first started drawing. I didn't like drawing hair because I would spend all this time trying to draw a nice face, and then I would finally get a decent looking face, but then I need to add the hair, and the hair would totally ruin it because I wasn't good at drawing hair. All that hard work that I put into drawing the face kind of just went down the drain. At least that's what it felt like. Over the many years I've been drawing, I have improved at drawing hair, and I've learned some things about it, so I'm going to share what I've learned with all of you. So yeah, let's go to the tips. Draw the cranium. Now this may have just been me, but when I used to draw characters, I would only draw the lower part of the face. I never knew how big to make the forehead area, so I wouldn't draw it. But then when I would go to place the hair, I wouldn't totally know how to place it because I didn't have the shape of the head, and it'd be really difficult, and I would often end up placing the hair too close to the face, and there wouldn't be enough room for the eyebrows and the forehead, and the head just kind of looked like there wasn't enough space for everything. I don't really have much for tips on how big to make the upper part of the head. I usually draw a circle and then I draw the chin. The length of the chin depends on how old the character is. As the character gets older, the jaw gets longer. So yeah, that's my process for drawing the head. It's much easier to place the hair if you know what the head is doing. The hair isn't flat on the head. One thing I will often see, and I may have also done this, is that the hair will be drawn flat on the head, like there's no space between the hair and the head. You can do this if you want to, but hair, especially in anime and manga, is drawn with some space in between the hair and the head. This makes it look fuller and like it has a lot of volume, and it's really pretty. How much space is in between the hair and the head varies from style to style. The more space you add, the more stylized it will look. And I often notice in more realistic styles, they don't put as much space between the hair and the head, but they still add a little bit of space. They don't have it like glued onto the head. The hairline. I used to never draw the hairline when I was younger. It confused me and I didn't see a point to it. I still don't always draw the hairline. However, I will draw it when drawing shorter hairstyles or when we are able to see the hairline. Hairlines come in many different shapes and are placed differently person to person. The further back the hairline is, the bigger the character's forehead will look. One thing I want to mention that's related to the hairline is that when you're drawing hair, like bangs, you don't want the space in between the hair to go past the hair part. Unless you're drawing the kind of bangs that kind of swoop over, but if you're just drawing bangs that kind of just go down, you don't want the spaces in between to go past the hair part. The hair part. A very important thing to think about when drawing hair is the hair part. The hair part kind of dictates how the hair flows. So if I place the hair part on the left side of the head, the hair will flow from there. Hair parts can also be different. The two major ones I've noticed is the line hair part and the dot hair part. I don't know what you'd actually call them. This is just what I'm calling them. So for the line part, the hair is kind of flowing from the line on the head, so all of the hair goes back to this line. For the dot part, it's kind of like all the hair is going back to this one point on the head. Draw larger strands, then break up the shape into smaller strands. When I was younger, I was always very confused by detailed hair. When I would try to draw detailed hair with lots of strands, it often looked a little odd. This may be partially because I would try to actually outline and draw each individual strand. This would make the hair look very crowded and a little like pointy noodles. Now when I draw hair, I draw larger strands and then I break up the larger strands into smaller strands. I find this method to be a lot simpler because I first think about the large shapes and where I want them placed, and then I break up those larger shapes into smaller strands. This kind of relates to the last tip, but when drawing hair, you don't have to make the lines fully drawn and connected. I do see some artists do this and it's really neat, and I think they're better at making it look good than I am. I usually like to leave space in between my lines because I find it helps the hair look a little bit more fluffy, and I just kind of like how it looks. I'll usually draw the top of the strand and then I'll leave some space and then draw the lower part of the strand. Also, fully drawing the lines and connecting all of them can be a good exercise because it helps you get a good idea of how the hair is flowing and how the hair works. Everyone has their own preferences, so you'll have to see what you like and what works for you. Variation. One thing to keep in mind when drawing hair strands is variation. Adding variation to the hair strands can help make things look more natural and also make the hair interesting. So when drawing hair, I try to think about the different strands and how big I want to make them. It can be difficult at first to know how to add variation to the hair strands. I used to find it really frustrating, but as I kept practicing, it became easier. Soft lines versus harsh lines. If you want the character to have a more edgy or sharp looking hairstyle, you may want to consider using more straight lines. If you want the hair to look softer and flowy, it can help to use lines that gently curve. Shading. Shading hair can be really tricky. When I shade hair, I'll often have a highlight going across the forehead area. I'll often make the highlight have a slight curve to it. Sometimes I make there be multiple bands of highlights, especially if the hair is really long. For the shadows, I'll add them to the underside of the hair, by the part, and towards the bottom of the hair. But this may all change depending on the lighting situation. There are many ways to draw hair. Experiment and have fun. Today I talked about how I go about drawing hair, but there are so many ways to draw hair. It can be super stylized, realistic, or somewhere in between. It can be so many different textures and lengths and shapes. So experiment and see what ways you like to draw hair. Before I end this video, I want to say thank you so much to my patrons, including Rachel, Andrew, Swinky, Vani, Nat from Academy Games, Lucio, Robert, Tamalam, Pisatera, Ann, Eduardo, AJ, Nikki, Michael, Adam, Narichan, Dan, Panda Bear, Daniel, Dozar89, Aaron, and Patrick. Thank you so much for being a patron and for your support. Well, thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope the tips were helpful, and I'll see you all next week in my next video. Bye!